Well, it's wonderful to be here today, and I know it's late in the afternoon, so hopefully I'll be able to synthesize a lot of what you've heard here today. I know what it's like to sit in a room and have it kind of go on and on, but what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of putting it all together. We're talking about transforming Southern California landscapes. And first, a little bit about me, because not too long ago, I was in the Dirty Boots group, designing landscapes, sustainable landscapes for Southern California. So Jody and I keep joking that we should write a book on this together, because it's something everybody needs to know, especially if you're in a decision-making position. Now I'm a director with a water district, and I see the other side of the water delivery and what we're looking at with water delivery in Southern California going forward. So going forward, what do we see? When we look out a couple years, we're not exactly sure, because some of the models aren't what they were before. As we all know, things are changing. Has anybody ever heard of Day Zero before? Day Zero is what happened in South Africa and Western Australia when they were literally coming close to running out of water. So when Jody talks about how everybody needs to do their part, this is a very serious issue moving forward. In water delivery, we like to believe we're going to be 100% of the time, because that's our job. But we have to realize some of these climate models are changing. When we look at annual precipitation where we live, I want you to look at that purple dotted line going right across the middle. That's the average. Do you see any year where we've been on average? No, right? And if you look at what is kind of our most average, we're down in the 8 to 9 inches of rain a year. Now, every now and then we do get these whopper wet years where we have, big rainstorms. We've got our El Nino and our atmospheric rivers that come through. But can we plan on those? What we're hearing is, we really kind of can't. So what we have to plan for are those lower years, and maybe even nowhere years where there's not water available. And inside our homes, people sometimes get real huffy. It's like, oh, turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth. Most of those behaviors have been baked in already. If you live in Southern California, we live in a little different way. We're water conservation minded most of the time. So we're at the point where we're using 30% more water than we did in 1990, which is terrific. But, there is room for change. And the room for change is in that bottom tier. If you look at how we use our water in households, we're using a lot of water outside the home. And that's where our low-lying fruit is now. So obviously the water wasters, if you're in maintenance in a community, you've got to have policies, you've got to have boards that back you up to go and fix those big problems fast, because that's where a lot of water literally goes down the drain. Evaporation is big. A lot of people don't understand how much water we lose to evaporation. So changing to heads that distribute a larger droplet size is really important. You don't want to be overwatering, and I'll be talking about that quite a lot, as well as non-functional turf. And high demand plants. We have plants that are kind of grandfathered in, were put in the 70s when everybody wanted to look like who knows where, South Florida, that are really not in our own best interests. So some years ago, Santa Monica put together a presentation, a demo where they did 2 identical homes side by side. One was done in the traditional manner, and one was done in a more sustainable manner. And you can see by the charts, the amount of water used in a traditional landscape versus a sustainable landscape, as well as the waste. So think about all the dumping that goes along in these landscapes, and manpower. Now, manpower is really important if you've been trying to get, fully staffed. That's a big challenge for a lot of us in HOAs. So if you're a decision maker, where are you going to be putting your money for the next few years in your HOAs? And how are you going to justify that? So the first three items, getting your system maintained, that should just be something that you're doing by matter of course. So I've checked that one off for you. You should have upgraded your controller because you know what, this technology is here and it's really very helpful. So get that on your list. And be working on scheduling your pulse timing, getting that water to really percolate into the ground on anything that's not other than dead flat, which is quite a lot of our landscapes. But what's coming up now is changing expectations for your homeowners. And I can feel you all cringing on this one. Getting our homeowners to change, that's like really hard. They want what they want, and they want their green landscapes. So you have to change a little bit at a time, and you have to get some buy-in. So you work on those priority areas, and you work on reducing the amount of plants that you have in your landscape, or shifting to more sustainable landscapes. So talking more to changing homeowners' expectations. You have to talk to them about the realities of place, and I'll demonstrate this for you in just a second. You have to engage your homeowners. What do they expect? What do they value and why? And how can you still give them the things that they want in a new way? Again, pilot projects. Look for places where you can start small and build big. And good design really helps. If you do this poorly, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So when you talk to your homeowners, you have to remind them that this is where we live. Beautiful Southern California. And if you were to put a lot of our landscapes out in that landscape, what would happen? Right? I mean, if you were to cart it all out there and come back in the middle of the summer, it'll all be trash, right? We don't live here. We don't live east of the Mississippi, where it rains on, you know, an inch a week throughout the whole summer. That's a different world. So, you know what? We have to change those thought patterns. We can't reproduce this here. It's unsustainable. Many of the plants sold are not adapted to Southern California. Good old hydrangea needs about 5 feet of water, and it's adapted to a spot that has acidic soils and acidic waters. That's not us. Sorry. Not only that, but the summers are high. The humidity is high. So those leaves never wilt. They're built like tissue paper. They'll never make it here. And they go dormant in the winter. Speaking of dormancy, the East Coast has a period of dormancy that everybody accepts and allows, right? That's winter. Is there any color in winter on the East Coast? Is there even a lot of plant value? No, that's their dormant season. So how come we can't allow a dormant season in Southern California? Because Southern California, it is another world. And lately we've been having conditions, they're like nothing we've seen before. The conditions are harsh and getting harsher. This year, we've got about 5 inches of rain, maybe 6. We've had summer highs up in, like about 113 degrees, and humidity is down to 5%. Go stand out there on a day like that and see what it takes to survive. Pretend you're a plant. Stand out there for an hour and tell me how it's going for you, because I speak for the trees. It's tough out there. And our water, especially if state water project water gets cut off, is going to be coming from the Colorado River. And it's much more alkaline. So our plants are going to have a harder job. Where we live is beautiful. We need to celebrate that. I've been around the world looking at gardens, and they actually tried to reproduce Southern California in England, and it was kind of funny. They had to build like a multi-million-dollar geodome, and you walk in and these poor plants are trying to keep the humidity out. If you can imagine what that costs to keep the humidity out in England, it was kind of surreal. Because they value our plants actually more than we do. People are stealing all our Dudleys. They had to put a bounty on their heads for the guys that were stealing those out of our natural landscapes. So we need to value what we have and our habitat. It supports many species that really need our help. So back to community engagement. Obviously, we have to talk to people about how in order to get this done. And a lot of people actually, when they were younger, had this mindset. So you just need to remind them of that. You know, a lot of us came from very stewardship backgrounds. So, you know, it's just time to say, hey, you remember when you were like, remember that you used to care. As an HOA, you have to own the challenges. You have to talk about those rising maintenance costs. And you have to talk about how unsustainable non-functional turf is. Find your influencers. As June said, you know, there are people in your community that can help you sell this. Build community support. You're not going to get it overnight, but you know what? The drought is actually going to help you. Look for opportunities. And again, design, design, design. In managing community expectations, you're going to have some signage because not everybody's going to be on the same page as you are at the same time. So you're going to have those people that are saying it looks dry. You know, there are people who will say it looks dead. It's not dead, it's dormant. You know, it's the same thing as that winter slide. And when you find things that work in your community, repeat them. Don't think you have to keep reinventing the wheel. So people also want to know, what is this helping? What is this landscape helping in order to get buy-in? So a lot of people do want to help the ecosystem. They want to help the butterflies. They want to help the birds. They want to help the insects that need our help. So tell them what you're going to help. It might be their wallets, and that's a good thing too. So think about what backbone plants are really going to work for you. How are you going to maintain that dieback in a different season? Whether you're going to have some kind of self-sowing plants for bloom later. Now there's a big success story right in our backyard for how this works. And it's called Shady Canyon in Irvine. Some of the most expensive real estate in Southern California, with homes going for $5 to $50 million. Lots of Fortune 500 folks in there. Now, when they started, they decided they were going to use an adaptive landscape approach, and they set a plant palette. You're only allowed to have a small % of turf in your backyard. Yes, they have to see to their fire hazard and their mitigations a couple times a year, but they roll that right into their regular maintenance. The golf course uses warm season Bermuda instead of cool season fescue. And the entire landscape is watered with recycled water. So it can be done. Maybe ask for a tour if you can. And when you drive through the gates, it feels like California. It feels amazing with these huge oak trees. Did you know that oak trees have a couple different kinds of photosynthesis? They're so well adapted that they can actually change the shape of their leaves during the course of the season. And that as they grow, they cultivate a mycorrhizal mat under their roots. During the day, what they do is they make all these sugars in their canopy, and they push it down to their roots during the night to feed this mycorrhizal mat that becomes a giant sponge and can pull water back from hundreds of feet away back into the tree. It's amazingly beautiful. And it only happens in Southern California. So, you know, those oak trees are incredible. They also use plants for security. You can hardly see the prickly pear on the right, which they use as fencing. With additional needs for water, for turf, you've got to really think twice. Turf uses 31 gallons per square foot. But if you change that choice to ground cover and shrubs and trees, you cut your water use in half. And if you use natives, it becomes minimal. Who knows what hydrozoning is? I expect to see some guys. Jody's got her hands up. We've got somebody here with, okay. Hydrozones are where, when you have an irrigation line, all the plants on that irrigation line use the same amount of water. So you don't have turf trying to grow with low water use plants. So this is something that should be engineered into your system so that you can dial your landscapes up and down as needed. Some trends in urban landscapes. The watershed approach, which we've talked about a couple times. Habitat enhancement. This is something that really has legs. People really do want to see the landscape doing more than just sitting there. They want to see pollinator-friendly plant selections, meadows for beneficial insects, butterfly migration trails, layered planting for birds. They want to be seeing maybe some dry, lush plant choices. And they want to get involved. They'll want to tell you about it. The watershed approach, I think we've talked about that, where you try to keep your water on site. You talk about the 3 Ps. You plan for rain. You do some bioswaling so that the water doesn't just whoosh, run off, all off. You can actually double the amount of rainfall that you get if you do this right. You plant local species and you plant them at mature sizing. This actually cuts down on costs quite a lot because you're not cramming a lot of stuff in. You plant for success, and you need to find somebody that has local knowledge and knows about different microclimates in soils to help you be successful from the beginning. This is Rogers Gardens, which now has California pollinator-friendly plants. If you're standing in this landscape, the butterflies are swirling over your heads and people around you are saying ooh and ah. They love this. And it supports endangered local species. We've got some endangered bumblebees that really need our help, and it would be really easy to do. And if you told your homeowners, hey, we're making this change because we're going to be helping something, you'll get a little more buy-in, even if the plants get kind of chomped down as new butterflies are born. So some pollinator habitat starter plants include milkweeds, which are a key brood plant for a lot of butterflies, but especially monarchs. Globe mallows, which are really important for those bees. Butterfly bushes, which are basically fueling stations for butterflies moving from point A to point B. Buckwheats, which support a large number of species. Yarrows and sages, which are a particular favorite of hummingbirds. So you're getting a much richer environment by making some of these changes. You can also simplify your maintenance by just designing things more simply. You want to right size your trees and shrubs. Don't plant a giant tree, or don't plant a tree that's going to need maintenance every 6 months like a carrotwood tree. Plant something that's going to grow slowly and to the size that you want it to. Design with texture and color. And throw in some seasonal display. Put some California poppy seeds out there and see how happy your homeowners are in the spring when they are driving to and fro. And it looks like California. And use mulch at least 3 inches deep to block weeds. You're going to want to make that shift to ground cover, shrubs and trees, because that's going to cut your water use in half, remember? You're going to want to look for those dry, lush options. There are a lot of them. The nursery industry is really working hard to get on top of this. You can consider turf alternatives, although some of these are expensive. Carapia is a plant that only needs edging and perhaps mowing twice a year if you want to keep it flat. Again, start thinking away from that. And there is some interesting research being done by the University of California, where they're trying to see how low plants can go. They plant plants using 3 different levels of water. It's a randomized study. They're all given the same amount of minimal care, and they're thrown out in the middle of a field and made to kind of fend for themselves. They have some very tough plants that have come out of that program that use maybe 20% of the water that look darn nice. Remember, your schedule is going to change because you're going to be working a winter wet schedule, not a winter dry schedule like back east. A lot of us already know this. If you're anybody in irrigation knows this already. You're going to be planting in the fall and putting a layer of mulch on, watching things grow during the rainy season. You're going to be celebrating in spring, taking a rest in the summer. Talk about guys who want to take a rest in the summer. It's maintenance guys. And then grooming in late summer and starting the cycle all over again. Now then, the dreaded non-functional turf. There's a real campaign, as you've guessed, to get rid of this, because this is our most wasteful and, as land stewards, least sustainable thing that we do. NASA says that if we were to put all the turf together, turf would be our most grown crop. And the cost to simulate an inch of rain per week is 200 gallons per person per day. That's not sustainable. If you live east of the Mississippi, go ahead. You can have all the turf you want because nature is going to water it for you. Living west of the Mississippi, it should almost be a crime because you're taking water from other sources that really need it. Now, we're not saying get rid of your functional turf, because think of fun, and functional turf should be fun. People should be using it. They should be having fun. Kids should be running around. You should be having your picnics, places where you can go out and, feel like you're out in a wonderful park. But non-functional turf costs you probably about $2 a square foot, and that's an old number in just maintenance costs, coming from gas, machinery, manpower, hauling, fertilizers, and water. So some things you can do when you leave here today is you can evaluate your community for non-functional turf. See how much of it you have. Could be cash in your pocket. You want to visit some demonstration gardens. Which water districts have a demonstration gardens? I know El Toro does, Fulton does. Talk to your water agency. Make a plan to engage your community. I know maintenance guys don't want to do this, but talk to your boards. Talk to the decision makers. Say, you know what, we really need to make some changes, and have them work on it for you. And start modeling sustainable gardening in key areas in your hood. And to help you with that, there's the CalScape Nursery Program. It's a regional collaboration to support the growing demand for California natives in the nursery industry. Everybody supports it because it is the right thing to do. Now, the CalScape Nursery Program also has free branding and training for nursery people. It also has a terrific database web page that can help you figure out what kind of plants might suit your site. And since these presentations will be available later, you can pick up these links later. So, and I will be available for questions afterwards. So unless anybody has one that goes, how are we doing for time? Oh, I got time for one. Okay, yes, right here. I was just wondering. So her question is about artificial turf. And what do you say to that as an HOA? That's a conversation you need to decide with your board, because as Jody says, that's basically, kind of plastic waste. But there are situations where it does make sense, so long as it's very small. So, kind of figure out amongst your board what you're willing to accept. I don't see a large landscape in artificial. Do something else.
No, I was just thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, you can make a policy change. That's a good way to do it. And thank you for your attention. Just one question. You can talk to me later. Thank you, everyone.